Welcome to this deep dive. You sent us a really interesting biology textbook,
Oh, yeah?
and we're excited to explore it with you.
Absolutely.
It's in German, so
Yeah.
that adds another layer of intrigue to it.
Right.
So get ready for a whirlwind tour of life, from the inner workings of cells to the grand narrative of evolution.
It's amazing how much this one textbook covers.
I know, it's a lot.
It really shows how everything in biology is connected.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what makes it so fascinating.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in with the basic cells. We often hear them called the building blocks of life.
Right.
But what does that actually mean?
Well, every living thing,
Mm-hmm.
from the tiniest bacteria to the largest whale, is made up of cells.
Right.
They're the fundamental units that carry out all the processes that are essential for life.
And I remember learning about different types of cells,
Yeah.
like prokaryotic and eukaryotic.
Right.
Can you refresh my memory on that?
Of course. Prokaryotic cells are simpler
Okay.
and much older in evolutionary terms. They're basically the bacteria and archaea of the world.
Okay.
Their DNA isn't enclosed within a nucleus.
Oh, right, right.
Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, are more complex.
Got it.
They package their DNA within a nucleus,
Mm-hmm.
and they contain these specialized organelles that carry out specific functions.
Okay.
You, being a human, are made entirely of eukaryotic cells.
That's right. It's amazing to think about all those tiny little structures working together inside of me.
It really is.
So what are some of the key organelles that I should know about?
Well, the nucleus is like the control center of the cell,
Okay.
housing the DNA blueprints.
Right.
Without the instructions encoded in the DNA,
Yeah.
the cell wouldn't know how to function at all.
Got it.
Then there are mitochondria,
Uh-huh.
the powerhouses of the cell.
Okay.
They convert fuel into usable energy through cellular respiration.
Right.
And without mitochondria working constantly within your cells, you wouldn't be able to even move a muscle or even think a thought.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so the nucleus is the brain, and the mitochondria are the energy plants.
You got it.
What other cellular wonders are there?
There's a whole cast of characters.
Oh, wow.
Plant cells, for example, have chloroplasts,
Right.
which capture sunlight for photosynthesis,
Uh-huh.
and that's how they make their own food.
Right.
And then there's the endoplasmic reticulum,
Okay.
which is involved in protein synthesis and lipid metabolism.
Right.
It's like this network of highways and factories within the cell.
It's amazing how much is going on inside a single cell. It really is like a microscopic city buzzing with activity.
Yeah.
But how do all of these processes actually happen? We need to talk about proteins.
Absolutely. Proteins are like the workhorses of the cell.
Okay.
They carry out such a huge array of tasks.
Yeah.
From transporting molecules to catalyzing chemical reactions.
Right.
And all the instructions for building these different proteins
Uh-huh.
are encoded in your DNA.
I remember learning about the 20 different amino acids that make
Yeah.
up proteins. Are they kind of like an alphabet that spells out different protein structures?
That's a great analogy. The sequence of amino acids determines the protein's unique three-dimensional shape,
Oh, wow.
which dictates its function.
So it's like delicate origami,
Yeah.
with each fold creating a specific form.
Right.
But how does the cell know which proteins to make
Hmm.
and when?
Well, that's where the central dogma of molecular biology comes in.
Okay.
DNA is transcribed into RNA,
Uh-huh.
which is then translated into protein.
Can you unpack that a bit further for me?
Sure.
What are the roles of these different types of RNA?
Well, you can think of DNA as the master blueprint stored in the nucleus.
Right.
And messenger RNA, or mRNA,
Uh-huh.
is like a courier
Okay.
that carries a copy of those instructions to the ribosomes,
Okay.
which are the protein-making factories of the cell.
Right.
Transfer RNA,
Yeah.
or tRNA, acts like a delivery truck,
Okay.
bringing specific amino acids to the ribosomes
Uh-huh.
based on the mRNA instructions. Got it.
And then ribosomal RNA, or rRNA, helps to form the ribosomes themselves.
So it's a really coordinated process
Yeah.
with each player having a specific role to play.
Right.
It's incredible how it all works together so seamlessly.
It really is.
And did you know that the genetic code, the way that DNA is translated into protein, is virtually universal
Mm-hmm.
across all living organisms?
Yeah. It's one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for the shared ancestry of all life on Earth.
It means that the same basic language of life
Right.
is being spoken in every single cell,
Uh-huh.
from a single-celled bacterium to a complex human being.
Exactly. A real testament to the unity of life.
That's incredible.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered the basics of DNA, RNA, and proteins.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious about how cells make more cells.
Right.
Cell division.
Yes, there are two main types of cell division.
Okay.
Mitosis
Uh-huh.
and meiosis.
Got it.
Mitosis is for growth and repair,
Okay.
creating two identical daughter cells
Yeah.
from a single parent cell. And meiosis.
Meiosis is for sexual reproduction.
Okay.
It produces gametes,
Okay.
sperm and egg cells,
Right.
that have half the number of chromosomes
Got it.
as the parent cell.
So mitosis is like making copies.
Yeah.
And meiosis is like shuffling a deck of cards,
That's a great way to put it.
leading to genetic diversity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It ensures that offspring inherits a unique combination
Wow.
of genes from their parents.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
This is all so interesting.
It is.
But I'm wondering about the energy
Right.
that fuels all of this cellular activity.
Uh-huh.
Where does that come from?
Well, that's where cellular respiration comes in.
Okay.
It's the process of converting glucose obtained from food
Right.
into ATP,
Okay.
the energy currency of the cell.
Mm.
It's like the cell's power plant,
Okay.
constantly generating the fuel needed to keep everything running.
And what about fermentation?
Oh, yeah.
I remember learning about that in relation to yeast and bread making.
Right. Fermentation is an alternative pathway for energy production,
Okay.
but it's much less efficient than cellular respiration.
Got it.
It occurs when there's no oxygen present,
Mm.
and it produces lactic acid as a byproduct.
Okay.
It's what causes your muscles to burn during intense exercise.
So that's why my legs feel like jelly after a hard workout. But going back to the cell's energy production,
Yeah,
you mentioned enzymes earlier.
right.
What exactly do they do?
Enzymes are like tiny little molecular machines
Okay.
that speed up chemical reactions.
Mm.
Without enzymes, the chemical reactions in your body would happen way too slowly to sustain life.
Wow.
They're highly specific.
Uh-huh.
Each one is designed to catalyze a particular reaction.
So they're like specialized tools,
Right.
each with a very specific job.
Exactly. And they work so fast.
Oh, wow.
A single enzyme molecule can catalyze thousands of reactions per second.
That's incredible. But how do they know which reactions to speed up?
So each enzyme has a specific active site,
Okay.
a region that binds to its target molecule, which is called the substrate.
Okay.
And this interaction is often described using the lock and key model,
Mm.
where the enzyme's active site perfectly matches the shape of the substrate.
So it's like a perfect fit.
Right.
Making sure that each enzyme only interacts with its intended target.
Yeah, but a more nuanced explanation
Okay.
is the induced fit model,
Okay.
which suggests that the enzyme's active site can actually change shape a little
Got it.
to accommodate the substrate,
Oh, wow.
like a hand molding to a glove.
Mm.
And this flexibility enhances the enzyme's efficiency.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah,
But sometimes enzymes need a little help.
right. Yeah.
What are coenzymes?
Coenzymes are helper molecules
Okay.
that bind to enzymes and assist in their function.
Got it.
They're often derived from vitamins,
Mm-hmm.
which is why a balanced diet is important for optimal cellular function.
Wow. This is also intricate and interconnected.
It really is.
It's amazing how all these processes are happening inside us right now
Yeah,
without us even realizing it.
it is.
But I have to ask, where did this incredible cellular machinery come from in the first place?
Well, that's a question that's fascinated scientists for centuries.
I bet.
But one prevailing theory is the endosymbiont theory,
Okay.
which proposes that mitochondria and chloroplasts were once free-living bacteria.
Really?
Yeah,
You're saying that these essential organelles
Yeah.
were once independent organisms?
exactly. Over time, they formed a symbiotic relationship with their host cells
Wow.
and eventually became integrated as permanent residents.
Hmm.
This theory is supported by the fact that
Yeah.
mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own DNA,
Oh, wow.
separate from the cell's nucleus.
So it's like a cellular merger that happened billions of years ago,
All right.
leading to the evolution of complex life as we know it.
It really is a remarkable story,
Yeah.
and it highlights the power of symbiosis in shaping the course of evolution.
This deep dive into the cell has been amazing. We've gone from the basic building blocks of life all the way to the evolution of organelles.
Right.
What's next on our journey through this textbook?
Well, now that we understand all of that bustling activity within a single cell, let's zoom out and see how these cells work together in complex systems, tissues,
Yeah.
organs, and ultimately...
I'm ready. Let's dive into the next level of biological organization.
Let's go.
Wow, we just explored the intricate world of cells,
Right.
the bustling cities that make up every living thing.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready to zoom out and see
Right.
how these cells work together to form tissues, organs, and ultimately an entire organism.
It's like going from a city map to a satellite view of the world.
Right.
You start to appreciate how everything's interconnected.
Exactly. But before we get into the complexities of multicellular organisms,
Yeah.
I'm curious about how life's diversity arose in the first place.
Right.
We need to talk about evolution.
Absolutely. Evolution is the grand narrative that explains how life on Earth has changed and diversified over billions of years. It's a fascinating story, full of twists and turns, dead ends, and breakthroughs.
I'm ready for the adventure. But where do we even begin?
Right.
I remember learning about Darwin and natural selection, but what are the underlying mechanisms
Okay.
that actually drive evolution?
Well, the key ingredient is variation.
Okay.
Every individual in a population is slightly different from the next.
Right.
And those differences are due in part to mutations.
Mutations. Those are changes in the DNA sequence.
Right.
Aren't mutations usually harmful, though?
Well, that's a common misconception.
Okay.
While some mutations can be harmful, most are actually neutral. They don't really have any noticeable effect on the organism.
Okay.
And a small fraction of mutations can actually be beneficial, giving the organism an advantage in its environment.
So it's those beneficial mutations that provide the raw material for natural selection to work on.
Precisely. Natural selection is the process by which organisms with traits that give them an advantage are more likely to survive and reproduce,
Right.
passing those traits onto their offspring.
Okay.
Over time, these beneficial mutations
Yeah.
become more common in the population, leading to adaptation and ultimately the evolution of new species.
So can you give me an example of how this works in the real world?
Sure. Think about the classic example of the peppered moth
Okay.
in England.
Uh-huh.
Before the Industrial Revolution, most of the moths were a light color,
Okay.
blending in with the lichen-covered trees.
Right.
But as pollution from factories darkened the trees, the darker moths had a survival advantage because they were harder for predators to see.
Oh,
So over time, the population shifted to mostly dark moths.
So the environment's like a filter, favoring those individuals with traits that best suit the conditions.
Exactly.
But isn't there also an element of chance involved in evolution?
Yeah.
You mentioned something called genetic drift earlier.
Right. Genetic drift is a random process
Okay.
that can cause changes in the frequency of genes within a population,
Okay.
especially in smaller populations. It's like flipping a coin.
Okay.
Sometimes heads comes up more often just by chance.
So even if a trait doesn't offer any particular advantage, it could still become more common just by random luck.
Exactly. One example of this is the founder effect.
Okay.
Imagine a small group of individuals colonizing a new island.
Okay.
They carry only a subset
Right.
of the genetic variation from the original population. Just by chance, some genes might be more common
Yeah.
in this founding group.
Okay.
And those genes will then become more prevalent in the new population,
Got it.
even if they don't offer any particular survival advantage.
So it's like a genetic bottleneck
You got it.
where the diversity of the new population is limited by the genes of the founders.
Exactly.
And another type of bottleneck can occur
Right.
when a population is drastically reduced in size, like after a natural disaster.
Yeah, for example.
The surviving individuals might not represent the full genetic diversity of the original population,
Exactly.
leading to a shift in gene frequencies.
It's fascinating
It is.
how both natural selection and random events, like genetic drift,
Right.
shape the evolutionary trajectory of a species.
But how does this actually lead to the formation of new species?
Right.
It seems like a big leap from a population changing to an entirely new species emerging.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's at the heart of evolutionary biology. Speciation, the process of new species arising, usually involves some form of isolation
Okay.
that prevents gene flow between populations.
So if groups can't interbreed?
They'll start to diverge genetically,
Exactly.
eventually becoming so different that they can no longer produce fertile offspring.
Exactly. Geographic isolation is a really common scenario.
Okay.
Like imagine a mountain range rising up, separating a population into two groups.
Okay.
Over time, each group will adapt to their specific environment,
Right.
accumulating genetic differences. And eventually they might become so different
Yeah.
that even if they were to come back into contact, they could no longer interbreed.
Wow. Voila.
2 new species.
2 new species.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
But can speciation happen without physical separation?
it can. Sympatric speciation happens when new species arise within the same geographic area.
Mm.
This often involves some kind of reproductive barrier,
Okay.
preventing interbreeding,
Right.
even though the groups are in close proximity.
I'm having a hard time picturing that.
Okay.
Can you give me an example?
Imagine a population of fruit flies
Yeah.
that specialize on different types of fruit.
Okay.
They might develop different mating behaviors or preferences,
Right.
eventually leading to reproductive isolation
Hmm.
and the formation of new species.
So even though they live in the same area,
Right.
they've become reproductively isolated
Uh-huh.
because of their different ecological niches.
Precisely. And sometimes we see these rapid bursts of evolution,
Hmm.
where one species gives rise to many different forms in a relatively short period of time.
Okay.
This is called adaptive radiation.
That sounds dramatic. What triggers these evolutionary explosions?
It's often driven by the availability of new ecological opportunities. Think of Darwin's finches
Okay.
on the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah.
They diversified into these various species with specialized beaks,
Right.
each one adapted for a specific food source:
Right.
seeds, insects, even blood.
Wow.
The different islands provided this diverse array of habitats,
Right.
allowing the finches to evolve and fill those niches.
So it's like evolution going into overdrive,
Exactly.
taking advantage of every available opportunity?
Exactly. And sometimes species evolve in tandem,
Okay.
influencing each other's trajectory.
Mm.
We call this coevolution.
Okay.
Think of predator-prey relationships.
Right.
As the prey evolves, better defenses,
Mm.
speed, camouflage, toxins,
Mm.
the predator evolves better hunting strategies,
Mm.
sharper claws, keener eyesight, resistance to those toxins.
So it's like an evolutionary arms race.
It is.
It's incredible how all of these different mechanisms, natural selection, genetic drift, isolation, adaptive radiation, coevolution, all work together to shape the amazing diversity of life on Earth.
It really is.
But how do scientists actually study evolution?
Right.
What evidence do we have for this grand narrative?
That's where the real detective work comes in.
Okay.
We have a whole arsenal of tools,
Mm-hmm.
from fossils to DNA analysis,
Right.
that provide really compelling evidence for evolution. Let's start with fossils, the preserved remains of ancient organisms.
Okay.
They're like snapshots of life from the past, revealing the incredible diversity that once existed
Mm-hmm.
and documenting those gradual changes over time.
So we can literally see evolution in the fossil record.
We can.
Are there any particularly striking examples?
Absolutely. We can trace the evolution of horses
Okay.
from small four-toed creatures to the large single-toed animals we know today.
Wow.
The fossil record is full of these transitional forms,
Mm-hmm.
linking ancestral species to their descendants
Right.
and providing clear evidence of evolutionary change over millions of years.
That's amazing. But fossils are only part of the story, right?
Right.
What about evidence from living organisms?
Well, comparative anatomy provides further clues.
Oh.
By comparing the structures of different organisms,
Uh-huh.
we can identify what we call homologies,
Okay.
similarities due to common ancestry.
Hmm.
For example, the bones in a human hand,
Okay.
a bat's wing, and a whale's flicker
Right.
are all arranged in the same basic pattern,
Wow.
even though they serve very different functions.
So it's like evolution has repurposed the same basic blueprint
Exact.
for different purposes.
Yeah, and sometimes we see the opposite analogous structures.
Okay.
These are similarities that arise due to what we call convergent evolution,
Hmm.
where unrelated organisms
Mm.
evolve similar solutions
Okay.
to similar problems.
Got it.
Think of the streamlined body shape of dolphins and sharks,
Right.
both adapted for swimming,
Uh-huh.
but their underlying anatomy is very different
Okay.
because they evolved along completely separate lineages.
It's like nature finding multiple solutions.
Right,
to
yeah.
The same design challenge.
Exactly.
But what about our own bodies? Do we carry any evolutionary baggage?
We certainly do. Vestigial structures are remnants of organs
Okay.
that were once functional
Uh-huh.
in our ancestors,
Right.
but are now reduced
Yeah.
and often useless. The appendix is a classic example.
Right.
And sometimes we even see what are called atavisms, rare cases where an ancestral trait reappears.
Okay.
Think of a human baby born with a tail,
Wow.
a throwback to our primate past.
It's incredible to think that our bodies still carry these echoes
It is.
of our evolutionary history.
Yeah.
But what about DNA?
Right.
I imagine that provides the most direct evidence for evolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Molecular biology has revolutionized our understanding of evolution.
Okay.
By comparing DNA sequences and protein structures, we can trace evolutionary relationships
Right.
and construct what we call phylogenetic trees, family trees of life.
Hmm.
The more similar the sequences,
Yeah.
the more closely related the organisms are.
So it's like a genetic fingerprint
Precisely.
that reveals our shared ancestry.
Exactly. And the universality of the genetic code.
Right.
The fact that all living organisms use the same basic code
Yeah.
to translate DNA into proteins is powerful evidence for our common origin.
It's like finding the same instruction manual in every living cell, from bacteria to humans.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
It is.
Okay, so what about the evolution of humans?
Right.
What makes our story unique?
Human evolution is a fascinating and complex saga, spanning millions of years
Right.
and encompassing a diverse cast of characters. We share a common ancestor with primates, but a series of key adaptations set us on a very unique evolutionary path.
So what were those pivotal moments
Right.
that made us human? What sets us apart from our primate cousins?
Well, bipedalism was a game changer.
Okay.
Walking upright freed up our hands for tool use and carrying,
Right.
and it also changed our perspective, literally and figuratively.
The expansion of our brains was another crucial step,
Yeah, absolutely.
allowing for complex language, abstract thought, and social cooperation.
Yeah.
And then there's the control of fire,
Yeah.
which you mentioned earlier. That must have been a turning point
Absolutely.
in human evolution.
Fire provided warmth,
Right.
protection, and a way to cook food,
Okay.
making it more digestible and nutritious. It also fostered these social gatherings around the hearth,
Yeah.
promoting communication and storytelling.
Right.
So the control of fire was a technological innovation
Okay.
that had really profound impacts on our biology, our behavior, and our culture.
So we're not just products of our genes,
Right.
but also of our culture and our technology.
Precisely.
It seems like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Our biology shapes our culture, and our culture in turn shapes our biology.
Exactly. Our evolution has been shaped by this complex interplay
Wow.
of biological and cultural factors.
And the out of Africa theory suggests
Right.
that modern humans originated in Africa and then spread throughout the world, adapting to different environments and developing distinct cultures along the way.
It's a truly epic journey.
It is. But what about our relationship with other primates? How closely related are we? I'm curious about our place in the primate family tree.
Well, we share a common ancestor with chimpanzees and bonobos.
Okay.
Our closest living relatives, our lineages diverged around 6 to 8 million years ago.
Wow.
And since then, we've both evolved along these separate paths,
Right.
accumulating genetic and morphological differences. But we still share a remarkable amount of our DNA, over 98%.
Wow. That's closer than I imagined.
It is.
So we're like distant cousins,
Right.
each with our own unique evolutionary story, but still carrying the traces of our shared ancestry in our genes.
Exactly. And by studying primates, we can gain valuable insights into our own evolutionary history, our behavior, and our social dynamics.
It's like looking into a mirror that reflects both our similarities and our differences, shedding light on what it means to be human.
It really is.
This has been an incredible journey
I bet.
through the world of evolution.
Absolutely.
I feel like I've gained a much deeper appreciation for the vastness of time, the interconnectedness of life, and the incredible power of natural selection to shape the diversity that we see all around us.
And this is just a glimpse into the ongoing saga of evolution. As we continue to explore the world around us, from the microscopic to the cosmic, we'll undoubtedly uncover even more fascinating chapters in this grand narrative.
That's so cool.
What's particularly fascinating to me is that even with all that we know, there's still so much more to discover.
That's the beauty of science, right?
It is.
It's a never-ending quest for knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely.
I'm eager to keep learning and exploring.
Yeah, me too.
What else does this textbook have in store for us?
Well, now that we've traced the evolution of life from single-celled organisms to these complex multicellular creatures like ourselves, let's explore how these organisms interact with each other and their environment. We're going to dive into the fascinating world of ecology.
I'm ready to explore those connections.
Great.
It's amazing how this textbook just keeps unfolding.
It does.
Revealing new layers of complexity and wonder.
Yeah, it's really quite something.
Wow, we've journeyed from the microscopic world of cells to the grand sweep of evolution.
Yeah.
Tracing the interconnectedness of life across billions of years.
That's amazing.
It is. Now, I'm really excited to shift our focus to ecology.
Okay.
The study of how organisms interact with each other and their environment.
Right.
Like putting all the pieces together and seeing the big picture of life on Earth.
Exactly. Ecology helps us to understand that intricate web of relationships that sustains life on our planet.
Right.
From the tiniest bacteria to the largest whales and everything in between.
So it's about more than just individual species.
Right. It's about how they all fit together in these complex systems called ecosystems.
No, precisely. An ecosystem is a community of different species interacting with each other and their physical environment.
Right.
It's a really dynamic system, constantly changing and adapting in response to both internal and external factors.
I remember learning about food chains and food webs.
Yeah.
Can you remind me how those concepts fit into this bigger picture of ecosystems?
Of course. Food chains are simplified representations of how energy flows through an ecosystem.
Okay.
They typically start with producers, plants, and algae that capture energy from the sun through photosynthesis and convert it into organic matter.
Got it.
That energy is then passed on to consumers, herbivores that eat the plants, carnivores that eat the herbivores, and so on.
Right. But real ecosystems are much more complex than a simple linear chain, aren't they?
Absolutely. That's where food webs come in.
Okay.
They're these interconnected networks of food chains, reflecting the fact that most organisms have multiple food sources. And predators, they paint a much more realistic picture of the intricate feeding relationships within an ecosystem.
It sounds like a very delicate balancing act with all these species depending on each other for survival.
And it's not just about who eats whom.
Right.
The physical environment also plays a really crucial role in shaping ecosystems.
Okay.
Factors like temperature, sunlight, water availability, and soil composition all influence which species can thrive in a particular location.
So a desert ecosystem with its extreme temperatures and limited water will have very different inhabitants than a lush rainforest.
Right. And within each ecosystem, there's this constant interplay between living organisms and their physical surroundings.
Okay.
We call this the interplay of biotic and abiotic factors.
I'm starting to really appreciate the complexity
of these ecological systems.
It is complex.
It's not just about individual species.
Right.
It's about the entire web of interactions.
Exactly.
Can you give me some examples of how these interactions play out in the real world?
Of course. Let's consider competition.
Oh, yeah?
Resources like food, water, and shelter are often limited.
Right.
So species have to compete with each other to get access. This can lead to adaptations that help them to outcompete their rivals, such as specialized feeding strategies or water conservation mechanisms.
Right. Survival of the fittest.
Exactly.
But isn't there also cooperation in nature?
Absolutely. Mutualism is a type of symbiotic relationship where both species benefit. Think of bees pollinating flowers.
Yeah.
The bees get nectar. The flowers get fertilized. A win-win situation that has evolved over millions of years.
Okay, that's a classic example.
It is.
But what about those relationships where one species benefits at the expense of another?
Well, that's parasitism.
Okay.
Where one organism, the parasite, benefits by living on or in another organism, the host, causing it harm.
Got it.
Think of ticks feeding on the blood of mammals, or mistletoe extracting nutrients from a tree.
Okay.
These relationships can have significant impacts on the health and survival of the host organism.
It's amazing how nature has come up with all these different ways.
I know, it's incredible.
For species to interact.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering about the flow of energy through these ecosystems.
Right.
We talked about food chains and food webs.
Right.
But how does energy actually move through these systems?
Well, energy enters ecosystems primarily through producers.
Okay.
Those organisms like plants and algae.
Right.
They can capture sunlight and convert it into chemical energy.
Yeah.
Through photosynthesis. That energy is then passed up the food chain.
Right.
As consumers eat producers or other consumers.
And at each level, some energy is lost, right?
Yeah.
It's not a perfectly efficient system.
Exactly.
Oh.
Only a small fraction of the energy from one trophic level,
Okay.
that is one level in the food chain,
Right.
is transferred to the next.
Hmm.
Most of it's actually lost as heat through metabolic processes.
So that's why food chains are typically limited to a few levels.
Exactly.
There just isn't enough energy to support a really long chain of predators.
Right, it's like a pyramid.
Yeah.
With lots of producers at the bottom and fewer top predators at the top.
What about decomposers?
Oh, yeah.
Where do they fit into this energy flow?
They play a crucial role in breaking down dead organisms and waste products,
Right.
recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. They're like nature's cleanup crew,
I like that.
ensuring that essential elements like carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus are available for the producers to use.
It's a beautiful and intricate system.
It really is.
But we as humans are having a pretty major impact on these ecosystems, aren't we?
Unfortunately, yes. Our activities are disrupting the delicate balance of nature in countless ways.
Right.
Pollution, deforestation, climate change, overfishing. These are just a few of the challenges that we face.
It's a sobering thought.
It is.
Can you give me an example of how we're impacting a specific ecosystem?
Sure. Let's take coral reefs.
Okay.
These vibrant underwater cities are home to such a stunning array of biodiversity.
It's incredible.
But they're incredibly sensitive to changes in water temperature and acidity.
Right.
Climate change is causing ocean warming and acidification, leading to coral bleaching and death.
Wow.
Pollution from runoff and coastal development also adds to the stress on these fragile ecosystems.
It's heartbreaking to think we're losing these incredible underwater worlds.
It is.
What about forests? They're often called the lungs of the planet.
Exactly.
Right.
Forests play a crucial role in absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen,
Right.
regulating the climate,
Yeah.
and providing habitat for countless species. But deforestation,
Right.
driven by logging, agriculture, and urban sprawl,
Yeah.
is happening at an alarming rate,
Wow.
particularly in tropical regions. This loss of forests has cascading effects
Right.
on biodiversity, climate change, and even human health.
It's a sobering reminder
It is.
of our interconnectedness with the natural world.
Yeah.
What about the oceans?
Right.
They cover most of the planet,
They do.
but they're not immune to our influence, are they?
Unfortunately, no. Overfishing is depleting fish stocks
Right.
faster than they can replenish themselves,
Wow.
disrupting food webs and threatening the livelihoods of millions of people who depend on fishing.
Right.
Pollution from plastics, chemicals, agricultural runoff is also contaminating our oceans,
Right.
harming marine life, and potentially entering our own food chain.
It's a really daunting picture.
It is.
But are there any glimmers of hope?
I think so.
Are we doing anything to protect and restore these vital ecosystems?
Yes, definitely. There's a growing awareness of the interconnectedness of human well-being and environmental health.
Right.
There are lots of conservation efforts underway
Okay, that's good.
to protect endangered species,
Yeah.
restore those degraded habitats, and reduce our impact on the planet.
That's encouraging to hear.
It is.
But what can we as individuals do to make a difference? It often feels like our actions are so insignificant in the face of these large-scale challenges.
I think every action counts.
Okay.
We can all make conscious choices in our daily lives.
Right.
Reducing our consumption, choosing sustainable products, supporting conservation organizations. We can also advocate for policies that promote environmental protection and responsible stewardship of our planet.
I like that.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web of life,
Right.
and that our choices have ripple effects throughout the ecosystem.
It's a call to action for all of us.
It is.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey.
It has.
From the microscopic building blocks of life to this grand tapestry of ecosystems.
Right.
I feel like I've gained such a deeper appreciation for the complexity, the beauty, and the fragility of our planet.
And remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration.
Wow.
There's a whole universe of knowledge waiting to be discovered.
Yeah.
From the depths of the oceans to the far reaches of space.
That's amazing.
Never stop asking questions. Never stop learning.
Okay.
And never underestimate your power to make a difference.
This deep dive was crafted just for you.
It was.
And we hope it sparked a lifelong passion in you for understanding and protecting this amazing world that we inhabit. Thanks for joining us
Thanks for listening.
on this journey through the wonders of biology.